call the May 28th, 2019 Food and Beverage Tax Advisory Commission meeting to order. We have a light agenda, but we will begin by hearing from the City of Bloomington at our April meeting, April 26th, I believe. We agreed that we wanted to hear an update on where we were, and the mayor said he would provide that update. So, Mayor Hamilton?
Sure.
Would you please give us an update on what's happening with the convention
Hello, everybody. Deputy Mayor Mick Renaisen is here too, can add and supplement as appropriate. And of course, others involved may want to do so as well, from the commissioners or others. We have, I was just looking back, I think we met last time as this group shortly after the charrette that was held, that the architects held. As you know, the city's engaged architects. The steering committee, the joint steering committee recommended architects. The city engaged them, and they have been very active in engaging with the steering committee and also then the public. And about 6 weeks ago, there were 3 days of intensive charrettes review with the steering committee and the public about the convention center, and there were dozens, I don't know, scores of people involved in that, and that was really trying to look at not design, but context and placement and scale of the convention center project, if you will. And the architects went back and on behalf of the steering committee over the last few weeks have been meeting both with staff and then with steering committee to present kind of the understanding and goal and outline of what might work. There were a few, the charrette actually kind of went 3 days. The first day kind of looked at the whole district, if you will, for the convention center, options of placement, where the convention center and hotel complex might be placed. They really looked at kind of 4 different big options. Some of this was in the paper. I don't want to repeat it all if it's there, but they looked at a convention center north, east, south, and west of the current site, looking at all the cardinal points and related places for hotel and parking and other facilities. And second day really tried to look more intensively at the site itself, as opposed to the first day looking at the whole downtown context and the half-mile kind of circle around the place and how it would interact with that. The second day looking more at context, and the third day really trying to refine those options down. The city, I can't remember if we talked about it last time, but the city was able to, through a generous offer from the owners of the block immediately north of the current convention center, the block bounded by 3rd and 4th and College and Morton, I guess, was able to, where Bunger & Robertson law firm is, was able to purchase that. So that gave more options. The steering committee then actually just last week met again, and the architects had refined some of the decision points about how it can be done, where it should be located, and the steering committee, which is a recommending body. The steering committee doesn't appropriate money or sell land or any of the things that need to happen, but the steering committee recommended that the main new expansion facility be located north of the current facility in that new block, and also recommended that the process had looked at different size options. We've engaged not only architects and design folks, but also convention analytics business advisors who've looked at different options of size for the convention center, and they really looked at expanded convention space of 20,000 square feet, 30,000 square feet, or 40,000 square feet for a new exhibit hall and or banquet hall. And then there's ancillary meeting space and all around that, back office space, back of the house space. But the group, the steering committee, basically felt that 40,000 was too big, both for in cost and relationship to what we could get with 30,000 square foot in the new facility. For comparison, the current facility is a total of 20,000 square feet. Is that right, Talisha? 22 usable space, the current. So it's 150% more of that, I guess. That would be for the exhibit hall space, and then there's a lot more meeting space and others. And the city and the county are still working on an MOU, and we're going to be, I think, meeting soon about that to try to figure that out. The architects have not begun the actual design. This was just looking at placement, scale. There are definitely budget questions still of how to accomplish all this, because the combination of convention center, new space, rehabilitation of the existing space, hotel, parking, et cetera, infrastructure are all add up, as we look at it now, to more than the food and beverage tax itself will pay for. So there's a lot of questions about how does that come to be, and those are good questions and need to be wrestled with, but we're really pleased with the work that has come through this committee already, which approved the engagement of those architects and professional advisors to help us get to a new level. And I think the steering committee, which was jointly created by the county and the city, has been doing good work to engage those architects, recommend the architects, and then be the kind of the public center of this discussion. So happy to take questions. Or Mick, is that fair description? Or okay.
I'm surprised you're including the hotel and what financing needs to be worked out for. I was under the impression that at this point we're still counting on the hotel being privately financed.
Well, I think what the steering committee's heard, certainly the expectation is the hotel likely is a private entity, but the steering committee heard from the advisors that and as we've expected, any hotelier is probably going to be wanting to negotiate as a convention hotel certain support, either from land, from infrastructure, from other supports to engage that hotelier in becoming a full partner in the convention center. So I think the steering committee was hearing from the hotel business side analytics, the convention center business analytics, that a hotel is going to probably engage in a partnership in some way with us.
So these are the incentive funds that get discussed, that basically, I guess, the city and the county together come up with money to entice a hotel?
Yes. Typically, I think as we heard from the advisor, that a full partner hotel in a convention center is likely going to be expected to and want to and expect to provide more meeting space to add to the mix than they typically would do for themselves in a complex like that. And also in a full partnership is going to be expected to align room blocks and the kind of that relationship that we don't have with the current hotel, for example, next to the convention center. That will need some partnership with the public. But
any additional comments or questions from the commission? Thank you. And thank you for the question, Commissioner Jones. Next on our item is the City of Bloomington for clarification on the City Controller, Jeff Underwood, having access to the revenue that's being generated, not access personally, but to the information, gathered from the food and beverage tax monies. So I'm not sure, Mick.
I just brought it up to be put on the agenda. I didn't have any reason to address it, just rather an update on how
Where we are with it.
And I guess, is this working?
think that picks up on CADs. Some mics are a little bit hotter than others.
And I guess to me, it's a twofold question. One is that when we submitted the documentation to the state on who would have access to it, Mr. Underwood's name was included. Kathy and I tried to reach out to Larry Molnar with the Department of Revenue today to kind of figure out where they're at. I think we're expecting something back from them that we haven't gotten yet. And we had that up there, I think, right around the 1st of April.
Pretty quickly. Basically, what happened was the old structure of permissions just happened, they're in the way they ended and the new procedure began coincided with the city's request. So I had to wait till they sent new documentation requests, which marry food and beverage with innkeepers, and I can't split it out now. It's just a new way that they're doing it. And so I had to wait for that information to come in and fill it out, which we put his name on it and sent it back. But I think, I'm not exactly sure what he's expecting. All I get from the Department of Revenue, as I've told this board several times, is a secure email that I cannot forward to anyone. I have to go through hoops to get into that email, get that email pulled up. It goes through the state secure site. That makes me authenticate who I am, and it is unforwardable. So what I have to do is take that information, make it into an Excel spreadsheet, and use that how we delineate whether it's city money or county money. That information, since I've already signed, they can come over and look at any time. I just can't pass it out, but you can come over and look at it.
When I talked to Larry, right before we forward that up, I think the impression I got from him, which is one of the reasons I want to talk to him again, was that the city would also get that email, right, with a secured link and all that. And so I don't know why he hasn't gotten it yet, but that's the conversation that we tried to have today with him, but we just didn't touch base. So we don't know why they don't have access at this point. I do think that there may be there is definitely some kind of training requirement, which my understanding is training is a polite way to say, I believe there's probably a 10 to 15 slide PowerPoint that says you can share this information in this way with these people, but you can't give it to anybody else. So I think that's part of it as well. And again, we're just waiting to get a call back from the state on figuring out all those kind of details. I honestly don't know why it's taken this long.
If I can make a quick comment. The city and county have been working closely together for months and months and had meetings with representatives from the state urging to have this type of information accessible to the city. It only makes sense, it's vital, it's kind of based on a way the statute is written that they don't have this kind of access. We've been pushing them and trying to get this to happen. If there seems to be a slight procedural further step to wrap it up, we're all anxious to find out what that step is that will make the state happy and open that information to easy access by the city, which should have had it for several months. And we've all been in agreement on that, so.
We've been in agreement that they should have had it from day one.
Exactly.
I don't think that there's any,
And
there's
what
no logical reason why they don't.
I haven't been to the training either. They just started sending me emails, so.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the collaboration on that, and if there's anything more we need to do, let us know, reaching out to the state or whatever, but we appreciate Mr. Underwood getting right into that, just to help do some of the analytics on the data too. Thank you.
Well, perhaps the squeaky wheel does get the oil, so if we could continue sending reminders and requests for access, that would be helpful. I'm just sure we're all busy, and so nice reminders are always helpful. The third item on our agenda is a sad one. One of our citizen members, Mr. Michael Cassidy, who is owner and chef at Uptown Cafe, has resigned from our commission due to his schedule, speaking of being busy. And so he with regrets, has stepped down from the commission. And I just want to thank him for his service to the commission thus far. And we will we won't be, but there will be a new person appointed to this commission in the future. So I wanted to say thank you to Mr. Cassidy. And Michael Flory, who is the attorney for the county council, would you like to add anything?
I think the citizens who step in and sit on these committees really do shoulder an important role in seeing that they are effective and move forward, and that kind of service on his part really deserves recognition. So I'm glad you've brought that up.
We will go back to the language and see how we're going to appoint, or not us, but the executives, how they will appoint the next person, the next citizen appointee.
Who the appointing body is? Is it joint or?
This is the part that's a little unclear.
Okay.
We will, the statute is very clear.
Yes.
But we
yes.
need to, that's very clear, and that is, they're all three joint. What we need to get clarification on is,
It's not clear that it's joint. No. It's clear that the appointments made by the city and county.
Okay.
The manner in which those are made is not stated by the statute.
So that's why we put it in the MOU.
yes.
We'll get,
But here's, I included the language from the statute in our agenda, so we would have it here. And it just says, 3 members who are owners of retail facilities that sell food or beverages subject to the county food and beverage tax imposed under this chapter, appointed by the city and county executives.
I just want to go on record
There's
stating,
that.
I know that you two are as busy as Michael. And so continuing to serve, which we greatly appreciate, does not indicate you are not that busy. But
That's
Michael
right.
was just felt a little pressed at the moment for that. But we sincerely appreciate your hanging in there, even with very busy schedules, which I know they are. So we try to be efficient with this time, but thank you both. And we'll be working closely to get a replacement added shortly.
And finally, our last item is a revenue report, and we have our auditor here to provide that. Thank you. Do you have any handouts, do you want me to, or do you just have one?
I'm sorry. Thought I passed these around, but I guess I didn't.
Here, do you have one? It's the same thing that you have.
Okay, so what this is this, half of this year received, you received the 2019 portion of this. The April allotment came in quite a bit later this month than has been coming in. It had been coming around in between the 13th and 15th. This one came in quite late, so that's why you didn't get that. We can typically turn it around in a day or two. Then somebody, I think it was, I can't remember, asked to look at 18 versus 19. Chris provided that, although we don't think it's a good measurement because during the same period in 18, we were still getting it going and people weren't signed up well. So, but you can, look at it. It's in April we received $291,297.35, and we had a $6 change from the state that Jeff and Chris and I reviewed again today. And so if they, I believe we had one of the businesses write a bad check, so it was some stuff had to be taken out, but it's a very small amount, and we believe it was on the county side that the person that wrote the check's what we figured out today. So we had already subtracted it from our county part. It didn't affect the city's distribution, but so the only really comparison that you have across 2 duplicate months would be April to April, and April of last year, you can say there's a big difference between 282 payers and 333 payers. February and March were combined last year. First of all, there was only 78 payers, and we only collected $79,785. But it's, pretty much it's in the high it's always over $250,000, and I'm expecting it to slow down for the summer because the students are gone. However, people like me will spend more this summer because the students are gone. So we could look at that a couple different ways. But I just want to reiterate that the city controller can come over and look at our records associated with this because of we have already sent the state the fact that we intend to share the information with them, my signature, so he can come over and look at it and look at the numbers, the raw data. And I don't know if I said it before you came in or not, but it's just a secure email I can't forward. So that's where the raw data comes from, but you're certainly welcome to look at it.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Mr. Sotili.
May 22nd, a report went out that said 411 entities had reported versus the 333 that's on.
411 separate entities, but in April, only 333 people paid. Now, we can't tell you who paid and who didn't pay, but I can tell you some of it's shocking. So know that 333 is not all the restaurants. Those are the ones that paid. So, and that's why it's payers. It's not people who signed up. As businesses go out, we still might get them on the report as a zero. Where businesses open up, she knows this because she's done this a lot. The businesses, and it also has over a month lag as we've worked out in the past. So a business might be in business, say 2 or 3 months before we ever see a penny. Doesn't mean they haven't paid it. Doesn't mean that when they say that this is April's pay from the state, it was really March's pay that they provided it. So without going into a lot of details, we have to say what money came in April. We get one lump sum payment every month. It came in late April. It was $291,287.35. Even though that's for April, I said it came in April. It came in later May than this year. It's always a month behind. However, they say that's April's money, but when you actually go back and you work with the restaurants, as I think we did with you, we found out, no, that's not true, because their records show where they typed it in that it was actually the month before or 2 months before. So this is the best we can provide based on the information that we get from them.
When we first started meeting, though, there was an effort made by your department to go out and make sure that every person that was responsible for paying the tax was paying the tax. Are we better a year later?
I will tell you, it wasn't just effort, it was a huge effort. I spent many, many, many hours in the hot sun walking and knocking on doors repeatedly, the same restaurants over and over. To the best of my knowledge, everybody is paying or has been pretty much told that they're being reported to the Revenue Department for not paying. But we are not the police. The Revenue Department is the one that has to go after them. I can't go after them. All I can do is kind of beg them to pay and tell them I'm going to call the Department of Revenue if they don't start paying. That's all I can really do.
Any other questions or comments?
Not about the revenue.
I had one about revenue too. Just Kathy, so I understand, did you feel like you get the lump sum payment from the Revenue Department?
Once a month, yes.
Once a month, and the April report, when did you actually get that money in May?
Yes, it comes in May.
It was later this year, this month.
Typically, on a regular month, the money would come in on the 13th and the report on the 15th.
Okay.
That tends to be the average 2 days.
It was later this month.
It was later this month, and they didn't send a report, and we actually had to beg them to get the report.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and we showed the lawyer the letters that we sent asking how are we going to break, the money's come in, so we just need the report. And then they have to use a secure email to get it to us and jump through their hoops. I think there was just a mistake in it, and there was return checks, and it took a long time to get it straightened out.
And then is the report how you allocate between city and county? Is that how you use that?
We use the parcel number. Okay, so that's a good question. So let me explain that, because I think that might be answer to some of your questions. So every distinct parcel where something is located has a state mandated parcel code. Okay, like my house, your house, the office you work in has a parcel code. So if at our house we had we'll just say a food truck that operated at our house, then if I lived in the county, then because that was the address assigned, it would be county. But if you had a restaurant in the city, say that was a block over, that exact parcel number is what we'd use. The parcel numbers end in 19 different parcel codes, and those parcel codes are mathematically tied to a section of the city. Like, for instance, you have Perry City, you have Bloomington City, you have some of Richland City, and you have some Van Buren City. Everything in those 4 codes goes right to you guys.
So it's
Based on that
done
parcel
parcel
number.
by parcel
Absolutely.
right now?
We haven't
We
split
got
it
rid of
since.
that, yeah.
Well,
okay.
originally we had to split it
Right, right.
because we didn't know
We
exactly
just
where
used
things located.
mathematics to,
Yes.
yeah, okay, but now it's,
And some things change, like this month, I think Chris explained to Jeff and I earlier today that a group that owned, like, we'll say, I think it was Burger King, maybe some other restaurants, they grouped together and they paid us a lump sum this time, or before they were paying. So now we have to go into that lump sum and we have to say, how much is for this restaurant, how much is for that restaurant? So I think we just left that money with the city this time.
okay, but that can all get adjusted.
Yeah.
And then,
But those are things that he can see if he comes over and visits. We'll show him, we'll say, hey, look how complicated this is. It's really down to the parcel level, so, I mean, it can't get any more definitive than that.
and then you noted, I think, that there were some payers, I'm inferring payers you expected to see on there that you didn't see this month, and you don't tell us who that is,
Well,
I know.
I'm
but-
starting to think that some people are paying, and they think that this is the way they're supposed to pay quarterly. Because you'll see, I showed Jeff a couple today that was like 0, 0, and then they pay. But now I can't tell if that's
1 month or 3.
or 3 months. I would literally have to go back to the vendor, and that's what she and I worked out, go back to the vendor and say, will you show me what you turned in for these so I can figure out what the state's trying to do?
Okay,
So there are several that pay 0 frequently, and that's why you don't see 400 and some payers on there. But I believe you guys asked me to tell you each month how many people did pay, so
Yeah, it's
that's why
helpful.
we're showing that.
that's helpful.
So this 291,297.35 represents 333 payers. So if you want to do the metrics on that, you could divide the 291 by the 333 and see what an
A little
average.
less than $1,000 each on average.
You know, so if we had 20 more payers, it'd be another
That's
$20,000.
$100,000 average revenue apparently, right?
But
Give or
I think
take.
our
Roughly.
benchmark was
Roughly.
over, when we looked at our benchmark originally, weren't we saying $2 million a year? Was it, we'd be happy
We
if we.
said 2 to 3.
2.5 to.
We're clearly at $250,000 or more making that.
Yeah. Good. You have any more questions?
Okay, did you have a comment?
I appreciate the comparison because it's not terribly deep right now, but as we build that up, that will really help us see that.
And we
month to
don't
month.
mind doing that. It just, we didn't want you guys to compare these large numbers with nothing the year before, but it's just now becoming relative this month,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I believe that at this point, basically, the project is in the design phase, and the county really doesn't have any business for the Food and Beverage Commission for the next couple of months. The city council is on vacation for all of July. I was just wondering if it might be a good idea to cancel those 2 meetings and be ready to meet again in August when everything is hopefully moving forward.
So Commissioner Jones is suggesting, since the city council can't vote on any expenditures or recommendations to us, that we would be on a 2-month hiatus or a recess and meet back again in August?
I think that's.
Has the staff talked about this among ourselves? Do they have a view on whether we're likely to need anything?
Mr.
I
Cockrell.
would continue to give you
The report?
I think as long as, from the county's perspective, I don't see us in a position to make any kind of requests for expenditures in the next couple months. As long as the revenue reports get to you guys, I think that's kind of the news for the summer, and I don't know of any difference clearly, if there was ever an emergency or anything like that, you guys would all get an email and say, hey, can we meet? But I guess at this point, I don't see any business coming from the county in the next,
Okay.
until August at least.
Thank you, Mr. Cockrell. Mr. Reniason, would you like to speak to this?
I think we're of the same mind. I think that while we haven't executed another design contract yet and may not, we have authorization from this body to go up to a certain amount if we do need to go back to the city council. And as Commissioner Jones said, they're not going to meet again until July 31st is their first day back. So I think we're okay for the next 2 months.
Okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Do you want to make a motion? Should we?
Yes.
Yes, that would be good.
I move that we cancel unless absolutely needed the July and August meetings of the Food and Beverage. June and July, sorry. I'm bad with dates.
Do you have a second?
Second.
We'll do a voice vote.
Can I just
Yes.
ask, I want to make sure, is there any statutory requirement of a number of meetings per year or any
I
number?
don't think so.
Okay, great,
Any other comments, questions?
thanks.
We'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Any other items for discussion? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.